I used to be a master manipulator, drunk with power at a very early age. I now know that the person I used to be was not who I am, who I truly am. I changed. I changed the person I once was into something better. When we change ourselves, we change the world, the universe, the astral, and the spiritual. This allowed me to have a much deeper understanding. When you've become someone who knows how to manipulate other people and then abandons that skill because he realizes that it's not serving God and it's not giving God glory to do those things, to be able to walk away from that type of power, it's something that has allowed me to be able to see the world from a totally different place and a different perspective. Everything has a consequence. Every decision, every idea, every conversation has consequences, has reactions, has people who are going to be affected by those things. Maybe not right away, but maybe 10 years from now, you'll see the effects of some of the conversations we're having today. And that's what I think is so fascinating about the current era that we live in. Even just this last month, there were several things that have happened in the world, like the Baalenciaga scandal, Elon Musk doing a Neuralink show and tell, Ye saying he loves Nazis. There's so many different things that are going on, these big things. You don't know if you should be looking at it or you should be investigating the stuff that's happening as this is happening. Does that make sense? So if there's something else going on somewhere else, it's like a magician's trick. Hey, look over here, it's Ye. Oh, look over here, it's Elon. Hey, look over here, it's Balenciaga. And then what? What's really going on behind the curtain, right? They're like, okay, what's the next thing that we're going to toss out there for them to talk about while we keep human trafficking, keep the pedophilia going. It's also clear now that these, demons, they don't care to just put it out there. They're very much just in tune with the idea that if we're okay with it, they're okay with it. And they think we're okay with it if we don't stand up, if we don't speak up about it, if we don't have some sort of reconciliation with the things that they did, right? And the whole history of Baalenciaga is interesting as well. I'm going to open your eyes to some of the history of some of these major brands, some of the stuff that Ye is talking about, and why you shouldn't just necessarily discredit everything he's saying, why Elon Musk is not the person that you should trust. And deep down, you're the one that should decide all these things. You shouldn't let anybody else just put a voice in your head. So even take caution to what I say, because we're all biased. I'm biased towards God. I'm biased towards Jesus. I'm biased towards the Holy Spirit. You might not be. You might be biased towards this world. And so your influence and your understanding is based and rooted in the world, while mine is rooted in the Holy Spirit. And so we have a different level of seeing the world. Our eyes, the things we pick up, the little nuances and the little vibrations that might, catch our eye, where someone's just staring at you, or you look at a sign that nobody else sees, and you're just like, hey, what was that about? Hey, I noticed this little detail. What was that about? Investigate, go figure it out, ask questions. Don't be afraid to question things. Too many people nowadays will just blindly let somebody guide them through a way of thinking, and then at the end make them feel like that's the only way of thinking, so they can no longer express themselves in an original way with original thoughts. Now it's somebody else's thinking infiltrating yours, right? That was the last episode, Infiltrate or Become, right? We talked about that. Don't let other people infiltrate your brain with their ideas. You have to be able to overcome. Don't become, overcome. This episode is a little different. I really wanted to take the time to research the topics that I'm going to be talking about. I also needed to take a brief hiatus because of work. I don't make money off of this podcast, and believe it or not, I live in Los Angeles, and it's very, very expensive, and it only gets more expensive to live here every month. And, I work in commercial production here in Los Angeles, and I can give you the real truth about how that whole Balenciaga thing happened and how it went down, because there is so much more that needs to be talked about that isn't talked about and that I researched, and then there's so much that needs to just be brought to light that has never been brought to light. So there's a lot of things that are going to go down in this episode. That's why it's called You Never Know What Tomorrow Holds. You never know what tomorrow holds, because tomorrow a new story could break out twice as big. People forget about Balenciaga. People forget about Ye. People forget about all this bullshit that everybody else is talking about, because now we only care about this. That can all happen tomorrow. Or tomorrow you might just wake up and you get hit by a car. Or you don't even wake up. Or you go up to work and you get fired. Or you come home during your lunch break, your wife's cheating on you. Or God forbid all these things happen, right? But you just never know. You literally never know. Like a family member could just die tomorrow and you just don't know that today, right? You don't know that today. You could find out you have cancer tomorrow, but you don't know that today. The one thing that we know for sure is going to happen is that Jesus is going to come back. That's the only thing that's guaranteed about tomorrow. That's the only thing. Everything else, unknown. Just up in the air. Dust in the wind. Who knows? That's the thing that they want you to rely on. That you are blindly just going day by day. Okay, no, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And they're just going to keep putting in these little stories or these little microcosms where it spikes up and it tells you, hey, that seems kind of odd. Why did that ad have that kid in bondage? Well, should I care? Nah. Well, you know what? I saw a bunch of people online starting to get outraged about it. Oh shit, maybe it is something real. Let me go investigate. Okay, I read a couple articles. Okay. Look, I'm looking right here on the internet, and it says that the owner of Balenciaga, Caring, the CEO of that, also owns Christie's. And what does it say here? Christie's auction house, very famous auction house. Oh wow, it's selling paintings that have genitalia on kids' face. Well, that seems strange. That is actually very strange. Oh wait, what? Oh, now there's mutated corpses of children creating these weird ass demon looking things. Wow, that is strange. Okay, so let's take that and let's look back at Balenciaga. Okay, so they have this situation where this little girl is being put in front of all these different things, and they claim it was supposed to be to promote their gift shop, their Christmas gift shop. You see all the stuff laid out in front of it like it's some sort of seance, like everything's spread apart, like just there's even candles. There's the problem with the pictures that Balenciaga put out. It wasn't just the teddy bear, right? It's that you sprinkled in all these other like little nuanced things, like a pizza, the white rabbit. You literally had like a floating demon thing in the background, like black birds. All this shit that everybody is aware of. It all leads back to this big global cabal, right? That we all, if you have any sort of knowledge, have some awareness or even just an understanding for how the spiritual and the astral works. It literally is right in front of you all the time. And this is just one of the rare cases where they literally got exposed because so many people were just like, this feels wrong. Why is this little girl holding a teddy bear with bondage, BDSM, surrounded by all this junk? What's going on, right? And then you see another picture and there's literally a Baal on the little crime scene tag. And Baal in the Bible was a false god. You literally have Elijah the prophet going and proving that Baal doesn't exist, that he has no power. It's recorded in 1 Kings 18:20 through 40 that Elijah defeats Baal and the prophets of Baal by literally showing that Baal has no power. There was literally 450 men who claimed they were prophets of Baal against Elijah, who was just one man claiming to be a prophet of the Lord. That is insane. Oh my gosh, I love this. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood and put no fire to it. And you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. And the people answered, it is well spoken. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose for yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first, for you are many, and call upon the name of your God, but put no fire to it. And they took the bull that was given to them, and they prepared it, and called upon the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered, and they limped around the altar they had made. And at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is musing, or he is relieving himself, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them. Oh my gosh. So these prophets are literally cutting themselves, literally cutting their stomachs and their arms. And as midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of the oblation. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, come near me, come near to me. And all the people came near to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be your name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 seahs of seed. And he put the wood in order water and cut the bull in pieces and laid it on the wood. And he said, fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. And the water ran around the altar and filled the trench also with water. They literally just put all this water over the wood. That's how Elijah was bragging, basically. And at the time of the offering of the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal. Let not one of them escape. And they seized them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slaughtered them there. Damn, son. Y'all about to get wrecked, Baalenciaga. Y'all are about to get wrecked. Watch. The Lord's going to bring a lightning storm. I love that. That was 1 Kings 18. Go check it out. Powerful stuff. Absolutely powerful stuff. It's just preluding to what we're going to be talking about, which is going to be fantastic. Just some absolute bangers that are going to be coming. I also want to note there's going to be an episode coming up. Not the next episode. Episode 12 is going to be with Caleb. But the episode after that is going to be about Neuralink. And I'm going to discuss Neuralink just a little bit here. I sat through the show and tell presentation that Elon Musk did with his team. And I gotta say, it is quite the interesting story that they're sharing here. They claim that people will one day be able to telepathically type if they have the chip in their head. Their goal is to get the phones to work better than a human hand. So telepathic typing, moving the cursor with your mind. Obviously, they want that to be faster than the human hand. So it's kind of interesting. There was a lot of information that they shared during their show and tell. I'm going to go through most of it during the actual Neuralink episode, which is episode 13. Crazy. But I'm going to just talk about a little bit of it now, just to kind of give you a tease for what that's going to be like. So basically, what I got out of this presentation is enslavement. I'll get to that, but honestly, it felt that way towards the end. One of the things that this presentation had for the first time was the reveal of the chip, right? The N1 chip. Not confused with the Apple one. This is N1 chip, right? It's the size of a quarter. It still has a battery that needs to be charged. It was funny watching them charge it next to the little pad that you have to like walk up to. It's just ridiculous. The robot who installs the chip is called the R1 robot. R1. In order to have a chip installed into your brain, you must allow the robot to make incisions into your brain. And guess how many incisions you need? Take a wild guess. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many incisions? 64 incisions in the brain. I'm going to put a picture up on the YouTube video just because of the fact that this is insane. Like 64 threads. And it goes so deep. Like, you don't understand. The neuroscience that is being involved in this thing is so in depth and it's so interesting to watch. Still, though, it feels like it's leading to enslavement. The robot has to make 64 incisions and insert 64 threads into the brain in order for the cortex chip to properly function and for it to be able to record the 1,000 waves that give you the data that is collected by the Neuralink operators. That is just the beginning. It literally is like the craziest thing. They said they want to get it down to 15 minutes where this thing's just like jabbing into your brain for like 15 minutes. And the picture is crazy. It's literally threads of like robotic threads that are like gonna put these electrodes into your body. I don't want to go too in depth with it, like I said, because I do want to save it for the episode, but I will shoot on the big points here. The implants can handle up to 4 chips. That's their goal. They want a person to be able to have up to 4 chips in their body, each one having all of these threads connected to different data points, right? And different neurons. So our body is made of a lot of neurons. That's how our body basically connects from our muscles to our brain. And when we move, there's little zaps that are literally going super fast that are like zoom, 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 you're moving. And that's why your brain's able to like do those things and then take data, right? There are people in this world who have had spinal cord injuries or spinal cord diseases that have caused them to not be able to do these things, right? Some people, there's a disconnect, right? And I'm going to go into that in that episode because it really is a fascinating thing when you break it all down. They talk about how they want to try to avoid, the brain vessels. They want to make sure that the brain is nice and healthy as you're doing it and that there's no destruction to the brain at all. So the N1 surgery, the thread insertion is done by the robot. The rest of the surgery is done by a neurologist. So the first part where the threads are being put in is done by the robot, the R1 robot. The rest of the surgery, the second part, is done by a neurologist, a neurosurgeon. And it's interesting because there's 5 layers right now from the skin to the brain. It's the skin, the skull, the dura, the pia, and the brain. So they have to go through the skin, through the skull, through the dura, through the pia, into the brain, and that's where the R1 robot is able to insert these threads. They also mentioned upgradability, right? Eventually, they want to get to the point where obviously next gen stuff happens every year, right? So the option to upgrade, they hope that they won't have to go all the way down to the brain again. They can just go to the dura, and from the dura access the chip to where they can update. I believe it's going to require a whole nother surgery. It's very interesting to see them talk about this stuff because it's like, imagine getting something one year, you're like, oh, I got the chip, and then the next year you got to go get another surgery for another chip, and then the next year you got to get another surgery for another chip. Like, it's just too much. So the way it works is basically the chip is connected to your brain and it's connected to your phone by Bluetooth. So this is literally for people who can't use their hands or can't move their bodies. Like, they would literally have this in their head and they would be able to look at a screen and the screen would be connected with them, and they would basically be able to connect and type and search and still use the web in some function, right? That's their goal. That's the whole reason they started this, right? Next generation, this is like the next gen, basically what they want to do in the future, right? Which is the spinal cord injuries and fixing the inability to move, right? They even talked about eventually getting to the point where they can reanimate a body. Now, reanimating a body sounds a lot like you're trying to play God. I'm not the only one who thinks this. My buddy Nate Cody, who I'm going to talk about some of the stuff we talked about in a second, he's going to be on in a future episode as well, talking about the metaverse, which is going to be exciting. But we all know Elon isn't necessarily the most gracious person when it comes to being a God-fearing man, right? The man wears a Halloween costume called the Devil's Champion and with upside down crosses and a Baphomet sticker in the front, right? Like, he's not afraid to show who his allegiance is with, right? Yet we still consider him, oh, he's so smart, or whatever the fuck anybody else wants to say online. I don't believe any of the bullshit. Guy's gonna burn in hell. But for now, it's interesting to observe the stuff he's talking about because it's all being played out with you sitting in the front row, watching it all happen. And then at the end of it, they're gonna go, you want more popcorn for round 2? Because they're not actually trying to help you escape that simulation matrix, whatever understanding you want to call it, because the matrix simulation is really just you blindly following whatever they tell you to go and read and see, and not stepping outside of that and going, maybe I should leave that whole world off for a second and then go do some independent research about stuff that maybe people don't want me to know about, which is, I'm going to talk about some stuff people don't want you to know about in a second, which is going to get crazy. Stay tuned. Don't leave. It's going to get good. It's already interesting with this Neuralink stuff, but trust me, it's going to get 10 times better. So they already tested this on prototypes, right? They've already got the prototypes. They already got the spinal cord chips implanted into animals. But what was crazy is they actually showed us a model of a pig who had these different pinpoints on its body that would basically show the team the muscle movement and the joints in the leg, right? They basically put all these points in the leg while the pig had the spinal cord chip, right? They then said, we're going to stimulate a point in its body, right? We're going to stimulate this nerve so that the leg will move. And then when they pressed the button, the fucking leg moved. And when I tell you, it was the scariest thing because that pig had no control over him. Let me say that again. He had no control over somebody else controlling him because he was chipped up and somebody else was controlling the stimulants that were being sent to his body because of the chip. And it was just a pig right now. It was just a pig. But then they say, oh yeah, we're hoping to start human trials in 6 months. We're hoping it starts in 6 months. We'll see what happens. But it's with a pig right now, and we're stimulating this part of his leg, and it's moving it up. It's tensing up, and the pig didn't want to do that. But oh, don't worry, it's in this box. It's in a square. So if the pig goes in there, he knows that we're going to stimulate him. If he gets out of it, we don't stimulate him. Yeah, that's still slavery. That frightens me for the future, because right now it's just a simple pig moving its leg. And then, years from now, it's like, yeah, I got 4 chips in me. And as soon as Elon wants me to go to war, I'm... It's like the ultimate MK Ultra. Literally Winter Soldier for all you Marvel fans out there. Literally Winter Soldier. Like you could just Winter Soldier someone through the typing on a computer. It's absolutely frightening, the things that they showed during that show and tell. And I'm going to get to it in its own episode, but that's where I want to leave it. It was absolutely frightening. And not to mention the amount of monkeys who died while they were testing the first initial devices. Like just cruelty to those monkeys, like completely jacked their fucking minds. It says here, Elon's Neuralink brain chip test kills 15 out of 23 monkeys. That's crazy. Elon also said that if his daughter broke her neck today, he would give her the surgery to get the chips inside of her. This is someone who would literally just throw his children into the ocean if it meant saving himself, because that's all he's doing. He's just using them as a prop. This is the reason I bring all this stuff up, right? At the very end of this presentation, someone asked Elon about the capabilities of the devices, right? Would you be able to record sight? Would you be able to record sounds? And he basically said like, well, we're kind of getting into Black Mirror world if we think about it that way. But, if there was ever a device that could potentially record memories, it would probably be this one. And the device will literally allow us to understand the brain and its complexities more, but at what cost? Right now, we're just guessing, and we're doing fine. Like nobody necessarily needs to know the deepness of these fucking things, but yet they keep pushing to where now they're trying to affect God's design. And I get it. There's always people who are trying to mess with God's design, and that's why God gets mad, right? I get it. Elon, like I said, he's shown his allegiance. The reason I say enslavement is because of the World Economic Forum. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the World Economic Forum, but they got their fucking hands in everybody's pockets. But there's a man named Yuval Noah, who is the lead advisor to Klaus Schwab, who started the World Economic Forum. And this is what he said at one of the conferences. He said, we need to realize that humans are now hackable animals. You can hack them. Literally what he said. He said, a good two-way communication system, direct communication system between brains and computers, this is kind of the watershed moment. I mean, once you have a good two-way, nobody has any idea what happens after that. Literally talking about the connection of AI and human brains, right? He goes deeper. He talks about the ability to understand what's going on inside of you, what makes you go. The most important data is what is happening in your body today. He talks about there have been 2 revolutions, the computer science revolution or the infotech revolution and the biological sciences revolution. He says they're separate for now, but they are about to merge. Literally said that like a couple of months ago. Separate for now, but they are about to merge. And they will in 6 months when Neuralink starts its human trials. That's the part that I'm trying to connect you right here. They are separate for now, but they are about to merge when Neuralink starts its human trials in 6 months. Now, here's another thing. Klaus was speaking at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And at the end, he says, what the 4th Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities. Now, he doesn't see this happening overnight, but he's saying this as something that is going to happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And it starts with companies like Neuralink, who are already creating this chip, literally almost Mark of the Beast-like, that is going to basically function as this connector for the physical, the digital, and the biological identities that we all have, fusing them together and then enslaving humanity. That's what it feels like. I mean, if people are already talking about stuff like this, like who says we need to realize that humans are now hackable animals? Yuval Noah literally doesn't sound like a human. Like a person to say humans are now hackable. You can hack them. That sounds like someone who's not human. You literally don't even sound human. What kind of person wants to hack another human being? What the fuck? So me and my buddy Cody literally had a conversation about Neuralink. And when I literally talked to him about the Neuralink scientists controlling the pig's movement by sending stimulants to these places in its leg, he literally said enslavement. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I literally wrote it down in my journal. Like, I'm right there with you, man. And he even told me, he goes, well, think about it this way, man. Who else is pushing electric vehicles? And we all go back to Elon Musk, right? And everybody knows electric vehicles are being operated and controlled remotely, right? There's a server, there's software updates, there's all this stuff. And so someone's keeping tabs on that car, right? Someone can lock your car. Someone can, there's videos where that shit happens where cars lock or cars are self-driving and then they crash because they stop self-driving and someone's asleep. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating when he said that, EVs literally are another form of enslavement, right? Eventually, let's say everybody has chips, everybody's got EVs, then it's easy to just control that population. Oh, you can't drive anymore unless you do what we tell you. Oh, you can't move anymore without us letting you, I think there's a really scary future ahead of us if we don't start realizing as humans that this technology that so many people are messing with and so many people are trying to get it to the point where it's godlike is leading us down the wrong path of history. History deserves to have thousands of years more of humanity, but in this type of direction that we're taking, it seems like we're only going to have 100, and it's just an interesting thing. I mean, I'm not going to be around obviously 300 400 years from now. I'm going to be dancing in heaven with the Lord. I still want the future generations of this earth to have something to enjoy. One of the other things Cody said was like, maybe in 10 20 years we might not even have phones anymore. What's an iPhone? What's an Android? Like, what if these big companies 30 40 years from now aren't even around anymore because we've already moved past phones, right? Now we're all wearing AR VR glasses that can switch simultaneous. That's the kind of stuff me and Cody were talking about, and I think that's going to be such a great conversation when I get him on the show. But it was just a cool tease to kind of make you think, right? Like, man, what if we don't have phones in like 30 40 years and it's just everybody's wearing glasses that allow you to just like jump into a metaverse? And who knows, right? We'll see how it works out. It's definitely interesting to speculate and think about. Completely unrelated to anything I've said though, but did you guys see that video of the human trafficked kids in the border down south, where the guard literally asks a man with 2 kids who look like they're sedated, and in the video the guard asks the man, "Where's the mom?" And the guy says, "Oh, she left me." And the guard turns around and tells the guy who was behind the camera and goes, "I told you they would say that." Isn't that something that should be investigated? Isn't that something that should be looked at? I'm just putting it out there in the middle of all this because I think it's important. Moving on, let's really break down this Balenciaga thing. I really want to get into it. The truth about the Balenciaga sex scandal is that they want you to get over it. They want you to get tired of hearing about it. They want you to get tired of this agenda being pushed all over you, right? So that you just keep letting it happen. You don't care anymore. You're just like, oh, can we talk about somebody else? Can we talk about something else? Can we just like move on? That's what they want. They want you to just, oh my gosh, okay, we just move on past this. All right, can like forgive and forget, right, guys? Come on. They're relying on you to forget. There's 2 sides of this coin. First side is, yes, they're fucking weirdos for having all this BDSM stuff around kids and all this weird shit, right? Baalenciaga is definitely a company that shouldn't be around the way it is right now. And I'm going to go into the history of that company because the way it started and the way it is now is completely different. Cristobal Balenciaga would literally hate this company today. He would absolutely hate it. After reading his story, I literally spent hours reading his story, reading about him. He would hate it. He would hate Balenciaga today. The Baalenciaga scandal is a narrative or agenda that is being pushed all around the US and the world. If you don't speak up or fight, the forces at play take this as you being okay with what they are pushing. So they push harder. Right now, God's people are standing up. We are stronger. Fight until they can no longer influence you. Baalenciaga was just the latest of hundreds of examples where the veil is lifted, where the fight for your soul is revealed. Don't let them fool you into thinking this was some one-off occurrence, a flaw or coincidence. We know the people they hire and what they post online. We know the people who run Balenciaga's parent company, Kering. Balenciaga is a subsidiary of Kering. Kering is owned by Francois Pinault, who owns Artemis SA or Group Artemis, which is an investment firm that owns Christie's of all things. Can you believe that? It also owns Puma. Can you believe that? That's huge. That's huge. Francois Pinault also owned Alexander McQueen and Yves Saint Laurent and Bottega Veneta and Gucci. Wow, that is a lot of big high fashion brands right there, all owned by the same company. Not to mention that the owner, Francois Pinault, who is married to Selma Hayek, I learned, owns Christie's, which I went into earlier, that has the pedophilic art for sale, featuring distorted children with penises or faces or mutations that look demonic. That's the connection between the two. The parent company that owns Christie's also has Balenciaga doing weird shit. You don't have to have every brand that you own do this stuff. stuff, but I'm sure you have to try to get it in somewhere. I'm sure someone's telling you what to do. Someone's feeding them intel on how to do things, and they just fucked it up this time. And I'm glad they did, because it allows us to, like I said, lift the veil for a second. Balenciaga should never stop being associated with the deleted campaign images shown on its website that included the toddlers holding the company's teddy bear in BDSM bondage gear, wearing fishnets, studded leather harnesses, and never stop deleting them. Their campaign, their whole brand should be deleted. Seriously. Especially when I go through the history of the brand. Let's talk about Cristobal Balenciaga, the original designer for Balenciaga. Now, this man had such an interesting life. Like, in my opinion, he lived one of the most interesting lives. He was just alive during a very, very rich era in our history. And, you know, when he first started doing fashion, it was because his dad died and his mom had to literally start sewing. And so he took a sewing class with her. By the age of 12, he was opening up his first fashion house. And then in 1937, he moved to Paris. It's really where he picked up most of his clientele. And when he moved to Spain as well during the off period in Paris, and then moved back to Paris a couple years later. It's very interesting to see his history. I don't want to focus too much on his early life. I'm going to share with you a quick story about Cristobal. He had become so big in Paris. Like, he had been dressing duchesses and princes and all this stuff, like high royalty. His dresses were so revered as being so beautiful and elegant and couture. Like, he was couture. Like, he was high fashion. He was so popular that he was even invited to participate in a gift for George VI and Queen Elizabeth's daughters. The two princesses, Elizabeth and Margaret Rose, were each given a collection of dolls with a 300-piece wardrobe designed by Patton, Lanvin, Paquin, Vionnet, and Worth, with hats by Agnes, furs by Whale, and jewels by Cartier. Balenciaga was invited to contribute, showing his signs of being at the top of the Parisian elite. He declined, not wishing to take part in mere publicity stunts, a characteristic assertion of his high seriousness to his craft. So he never did publicity, literally never did interviews. The only interview he really ever did was for the London Times, and it was when he decided to retire. There are virtually no photos of him and none of him at work, and he never went out really into society. So this is a very introverted, closeted man who doesn't want to speak to other people. He's so focused on his designs and his work and his dresses and the beauty of the dresses. He's so focused in that he does not have time to go speak to other people, right? Even when people would pay at the highest levels of money to just meet him, to see him in his Paris house, he would say no. He would not let anybody into his office. Only his close staff would ever be allowed in there. It's absolutely insane. During World War II, right, everybody knows Nazi Germany took over France, right? They took over Paris, and they wanted all of the Paris fashion houses to come to Berlin. Literally wanted to poach them. Balenciaga at the time disagreed, said, no, I'm not going to go to Berlin. That doesn't make any sense. You know, all of the stuff that I need to make these dresses is here in Paris. I don't need to go to Berlin. So he fought back. This is the interesting thing I want you to connect here. And it'll all make sense in a second. But listen to this. Balenciaga was close friends with Francisco Franco, the dictator leader of Spain, who was also close friends with Hitler. They talked frequently about Spain joining the war, which they eventually did, but only against the USSR when they sent in the Blue Division. He earned the name caudillo, warlord, strongman, for having strong political and military power. He makes sure Balenciaga is well taken care of, because Balenciaga lived in Spain for a period of time and he became good friends with this dictator. Francisco pretty much vouched for him and was like, oh, let him stay. So only 60 firms were allowed to operate without relocating to Berlin, and Balenciaga is one of the 60 firms. So that means like 60 businesses, only 60 were allowed to stay in all of France without relocating, and Balenciaga is one of them because of his connection with Francisco. Shady. But if there's one thing I learned about the man who created Balenciaga, it's that the only thing he cared about was the clothes. He knew high fashion didn't need big stunts. If it was beautiful, people would buy it. The man single-handedly designed and manufactured all his original dresses himself, and he loved to dress women, older women especially. He loved something about making a 7-year-old woman feel 50 or a 30-year-old woman feel like a princess. That was what he would talk about. That kind of amazing kind of praise for the people who would wear his clothes was very interesting to read about. He believed God made all women beautiful, but that wearing his clothes would make them that much more beautiful. He also enjoyed silence. He liked to speak in few words and made hand gestures when reviewing clothes that his close staff knew and understood. Later in his career, he was criticized and told his dresses were not for the young, and even told that he was also not for the young, to which he replied, replied, "I will not prostitute my talent." He absolutely hated the direction that fashion was going. He hated miniskirts. He felt that youth has no time for grand couture and the craftsmanship on which it rests. This is the original guy, right? Listen to that. This is the original designer of Balenciaga. Youth has no time for grand couture and the craftsmanship on which it rests. The original designer did not want to involve no kids. Kids wouldn't even be considered to be fitted by this man. He would never make clothes for children. So why are we now, 60 years later, literally doing what he would not have wanted? You're literally doing what he would have hated. He looked down when Yves Saint Laurent took over for Dior. And the whole story with Yves Saint Laurent and Dior is so interesting. I actually wrote it down here. It's just a little side story just because we're already talking about the history. But basically, during the invasion of Paris in France, Michel de Brunhoff, the head of Paris Vogue, shut down the offices rather than work under the Nazi supervision. He was the editor-in-chief. He was literally the guy running the whole show, and he shut it down. It was so interesting because he was the first person to meet Yves Saint Laurent, and he was close friends with Christian Dior. So he introduces Yves Saint Laurent to Christian Dior, shows him the designs that he had shown him, and Christian falls in love with him, and he literally becomes his assistant in 1955. And it was so cool to see that because Dior gained success in 1947 with his long, full-skirted dresses with empathetic hips, narrow waists, and rounded bosoms, right? 1947. In 1955, Yves Saint Laurent is the assistant for Christian Dior. Christian Dior passes away in 1957, and Yves Saint Laurent takes over for Dior. So isn't that, it has nothing to do with the points I'm trying to make, but I just thought that history was so fascinating. Like, how convoluted and tight was the fashion world back then? Isn't that so interesting to just read about? I don't know. I thought it was fascinating. But anyways, back to Balenciaga. Cristobal literally hated the word trendy. When he died in 1972, after closing his Paris shop and moving back to Spain, that was it, right? Nobody made Balenciaga clothes during 1972 to 1986. Like, nobody used the brand name. There was no clothes being manufactured. It was just what was already out there, right? That maybe someone was trying to resell. But who knows? High fashion pretty much ended when Cristobal died. Like couture, high grand couture pretty much died when he died. Like, if you look at some of the dresses he made, they're beautiful. Like, look at some of the Christian Dior dresses. Look at some of the original dresses that Cristobal and even Christian made. Like, the story of Cristobal and Christian Dior is so interesting because they praised each other in a way where it was like they never saw each other as competition. They saw each other as people with great gifts, and they supported each other to the point where even when Dior thought about shutting his offices down, Balenciaga came in and told him, you can't leave Paris because you make me better. They were such close friends, and that's why he was so sad when he passed, because he lost a good friend, and it was really sad because you don't have somebody else making high couture luxury items the way he used to make. And it's just interesting. It's very interesting, that the whole history. So what happens after Cristobal dies? From 1972 to 1986, the house of Balenciaga lay dormant until 1986. In 1986, Jacques Bogart SA, or the group Bogart, acquired the rights to Balenciaga. So 1986, different owner, original designer's dead. They're basically just using his name at this point. They don't have to honor any of that shit. They just bought the rights. Michel Goma would be the lead designer and released a new ready-to-wear line. Cristobal specifically disliked ready-to-wear, but understood it was the future. Without his input, they used his name in ways he would have probably hated. Yeah, of course, he would never wanted ready-to-wear. He was all about measure-to-wear. Literally, in 1992, Josephus Thimster took over Balenciaga as creative director until 1997. After 1997, Nicolas Ghesquiere took over and revived the brand to the heights it once was under Cristobal. He stayed for 15 years as lead designer. Here's the part that you have to pay attention to, right, as all this is happening. The group who currently owns Balenciaga is Group Bogart. They sell the rights to Balenciaga to Kering in 2001. Kering almost shut the brand down in 2003 because it wasn't profitable. Nicholas is still there all the way until November 2012. He believed by the time he left, and I quote, Balenciaga had become so corporate that it was no longer even linked to fashion. It all became so dehumanized, everything became an asset for the brand. Trying to make it ever more corporate, it was all about branding. It just wasn't fulfilling anymore, he says. So, In December 2012, Alexander Wang replaces Nick as creative director. Though Wang had no experience in couture, he brought Balenciaga a young, cool perspective and access to the American market. After Alexander, Demna Gvasalia takes over in 2015. Now let's look at the current designer, Demna. Demna, his philosophy is literally, he says here, starting his approach to the brand is to deconstruct something in order to create something else. Destruct to create. Destruct to create. That's how he sees it. Like, oh, break something apart and then you can make something out of that or make something else. It's just like complete opposite of what Cristobal was, right? Cristobal was all, I want to make things myself. He's the original. It was all him. So to take something else and then try to make something out of something that's already been made, it's not original. It's not Cristobal. Demna, the current designer, together with his brother Garam, Demna launched the brand Venoments in 2014. So he would stay with that brand all the way up into 2019. So even when he was already the lead designer for Balenciaga, he was still working on this other brand. Demna had built a certain frustration with the way the fashion industry was working, to the point where he even asserts, I was an executor, not a designer. I wanted to design and transmit my message. I didn't want to just design for the sake of it. I wanted to establish a dialogue and use fashion as a communicative tool. That's from a Vogue article. Now listen to that again. I wanted to design and transmit my message. I didn't want to just design for the sake of it. I wanted to establish a dialogue and use fashion as a communicative tool. Well, Demna, it's clearly working, man. You're clearly spreading that message and transmitting what you believe. I know you've now claimed that you're taking responsibility and everybody's taking responsibility, and obviously it was an inappropriate concept for the Balenciaga gift shop campaign. It was the wrong artistic choice, and we all know Balenciaga has guaranteed that adequate measures will be taken not only to avoid similar mistakes in the future, but also to take accountability in protecting child welfare in every way we can. All I heard was, please forgive me. The overlords who made us do this, they didn't think you guys would care. They didn't think you guys would actually take note. They didn't think you guys would actually stand up and be outraged. And the people are outraged. Let's point something out. The people are outraged, not the celebrities. The people are outraged. Where's the celebrity outrage? Where is the celebrity outrage? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Now, before I wrap up this little Balenciaga arc, and there's going to be some stuff that I come back and talk about when I get into this next portion of this episode, because it's about to get crazy. But I want to say this. The way the lead designer talks now and the way that Cristobal Balenciaga was are two completely different people, two completely different mindsets. They don't even align a little bit. Like, they've completely lost all the integrity that Cristobal had. And even this designer Demna will talk, I'm trying to uplift the way that it used to be. And yes, we're going to have our first Grand Couture runway show for the first time since Cristobal passed in 2021. It's like, yes, but also you aren't really giving a shit about what you guys are spreading, clearly. Like, you don't care that much, because then you wouldn't have put out the ad in the first place, right? Like, all of the symbolism in the background makes it look like it was manufactured, like it was supposed to come out. And someone said it online today. When you look at some of the images of the people who work at Balenciaga, their Instagram accounts, and just the stuff that it's kind of been going around the internet, it's very disturbing. And I don't think it should necessarily, the pictures should be shared. I think it's okay to be talked about, but it's disturbing stuff out there, man. Like, Balenciaga is very much wrapped up in this whole demonic, satanic arc, and it's really sad to see, because when you read the history of the original designer, he seemed like he was just a little boy who loved dresses and loved, designing, and he made a name for himself, pretty much working his whole life to build up that name. And now someone's taken it and used it to basically spread this horrible, horrible message. And I don't know, I feel like that's the part that bothers me about the whole situation, because it is a coincidence that his name is Balenciaga. There's a false god named Baal, right? And they literally put it out there, and it's all by God's design, right? Here's the part that gets me. It's all by God's design. Literally God's plan. Literally God put that name there. Then he allowed that man to become famous. Then he allowed him to die. Then he allowed the other companies to buy his stuff. Then to get to the point where now we're in 2022, someone uses that thinking that, oh, you know what? I'm going to put this message out there. But deep down, it's all like, you guys are literally just exposing yourselves because God designed it that way. He wanted you to get exposed at this moment. And so you did. So don't ever forget about the current Balenciaga and how different it is from the former Balenciaga, because the current Balenciaga is evil. It's bad. It's just bad news. Drop it. Burn the stuff. Destroy it. never buy anything from them again. Let them go bankrupt. Let Kering go bankrupt. Who gives a shit? Cristobal would have wanted that. And that's the end of that part of the podcast. Moving along to the final thing I want to talk about, which I think, in my opinion, is going to be the most controversial. Yay. Let's talk about Ye. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know who Ye is. You know who Kanye is. Everybody knows Kanye West. Now, it goes by Ye, and basically, a lot of people claim, has lost his marbles. And he just did an interview with Alex Jones, very, very famous conspiracy theorist and outlaw and just overall free thinker, promoter of free speech. Had him on his show, and the stuff that this guy talked about was just out of this world crazy. And it was just next level 5D chess. You're not on the same wavelength as him, even if you try. So I'm going to try my best to kind of have an understanding of what he was trying to talk about. I want to start out by pointing out some of the very specific things he said, right? For example, Ye literally said, pornography is pedophilic. That's one of the things he starts with, right? He says strip clubs, the sex industry, OnlyFans, it's all pedophilic and it should be put down. There should be a stop to it, right? And in my eyes, I see that as like he's considering unclean according to God, and how you think. Or he's saying this is how you should think, right? You shouldn't want to watch pornography. You shouldn't want to go to strip clubs. You shouldn't want to go find a prostitute. Like, you shouldn't want those things. Those things are pedophilic. Some of the other things Ye said was, I love the Zionists. I love the Jews. I love the Nazis because they were all a part of God's plan. He said Instagram is involved with prostitution. You buy and sell sex on Instagram. When talking about the Balenciaga thing, he said everyone's obsessed with Balenciaga, yet we're still aborting babies, still fornicating, still killing each other, but we just don't wear Balenciaga now. And he said, shut up. This is very interesting. He said he's friends with the lead designer, Demna, which is interesting. It's interesting Kanye West's place in all this, because it's like, do you actually mean what you say, or are you just trying to cause havoc because it's fun? That's the interesting part. Because, and this is what I wrote. To what extent does God's love go? Is it everlasting? If yes, then Ye is correct. Keep sharing, showing love, keep fighting. Most of the interview was filled with him spreading the message that he just loves people, right? Yeah, I love everybody. That's essentially what he's saying. Like, past and present and future. I love everybody. What he's trying to get at is when he says, I like Nazis, I love Hitler, I love all this stuff, is he's literally just saying that, first of all, he's using it to trigger you more than anything. But secondly, he's trying to get you to understand that the love of God is eternal. It surpasses all waves of crime, of judgment, of, anything. Like, any debasingness of sin, like, is wiped away by the love of God, right? That's the whole reason he shows us mercy and forgives us, right? It's hard to forgive a killer. It's hard to forgive a murderer. There's actually been videos out there where people forgive their murderers, or the person who murdered their son, or the person who murdered their daughter. I've seen videos like that on the internet, and they're so powerful because you can feel the pain inside the parent, and the fact that they're able to forgive the person who murdered their family it's heartbreaking. It really is, but it's powerful. But that person knows that there's a reason everything happens, right? That's what Ye was trying to get at, I think. That all this stuff happened for a reason. All of it. It was all part of God's plan. The fact that the Nazis formed a party, the fact that they took over, the fact that Hitler rose to power, it was all part of God's plan. You can't hate God's plan. You know what I mean? You can, but you shouldn't. You can hate, but you shouldn't. That's the way I read it. The crazy part about the interview is watching Ye literally mock the New World Order, the deep state, the cabal of parasites that run these big ass corporations, right? He isn't afraid of death. He jokes about being killed off by the Clintons. He jokes around about Netan taking his children away from him, putting him back on drugs, like Harley Pasternak was saying. Everybody wants to cancel Ye now because he said he likes Nazis and because he loves Hitler and he admires some of the shit he did, right? Everybody wants to cancel him. A ton of the people on the internet want to cancel him. They want to get rid of him. They think that his viewpoint is skewed, that he's lost his mind, that he's crazy. How can you say you like Nazis? Cancel anybody associated with Nazism, right? That's like the strong belief. Like, cancel anything related to Nazism. Of course. So you're gonna throw away those Adidas? You're gonna toss out those Pumas? You're gonna get rid of those Chanel bags? Maybe those Chanel earrings? Look into it. What about your Ford truck? You're gonna get rid of that? What about the United States government? Are they gonna get rid of the B-21 bomber? Now, all those things, you're like, what does that all mean, Luigi? What does that all mean? Let me take you through it. Let's start at the beginning. Rudolf Dassler is the founder of Puma. His brother Adolf Dassler is the founder of Adidas. Both men were card-carrying members of the Nazi Party. The Nazis also gave us the Volkswagen Beetle, so Herbie was a Nazi. It was commissioned in the 1930s by Hitler as the people's car, practical, affordable for German families. It was designed designed by Ferdinand Porsche, who also made the Mercedes-Benz. So anybody out there driving a Mercedes, it was designed by a Nazi. Better return it. Coco Chanel. Let's talk about her for a second. She collaborated with the Germans during the Nazi occupation of Paris, right? When Balenciaga was there, all that shit was going on, so was Coco Chanel. And she admitted eventually to being a spy for the SS. She was a Nazi agent. She lived openly with a young Nazi lover. Are we going to throw all her stuff away? Are we going to just burn it? Are we going to close down her shops, those hundreds of stores? Fashion designer Hugo Boss was an active member of the Nazi Party during World War II, made uniforms for SS and the Hitler Youth. Should we cancel Hugo Boss? Should we close down the stores, burn the brand down? Auto Union, known today as Audi, following its takeover by Volkswagen in 1964, was also known to use slave labor during the war. Isn't that bad? Don't we dislike slavery? Shouldn't we cancel Audi? That's like my dream car, guys. I found out about this while doing research. I was really kind of disappointed about it. Yeah, people can change. I know. Henry Ford. This one's crazy to me, because I never heard about this shit. Literally never heard about this shit until today. Henry Ford bought the Dearborn Publishing Company in 1920. Look it up. He released a 91-volume essay. So every week there was a new volume of this essay that was titled "The International Jew, the World's Problem." What the fuck? Wait, hold on. That sounds like yay. Why haven't we canceled him? Why do we still drive Fords? Why? I don't get it. He wrote anti-Semitic words. The essay was popular because Ford was popular. In 1920 to 24, the essay was translated in German 6 different versions because there was 91 volumes. It eventually had to be cut down into 4 smaller volumes that included all of the different weekly texts. Germans loved what he wrote. It eventually influenced future Nazis. If there's anybody who's here to blame, it's Ford. Hitler called Henry Ford a single great man in Mein Kampf, and even had copies of the essay as well as a portrait of Ford above his Munich office. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. Literally an essay called "The International Jew, the World's Problem." Think about that, and look at what Ye is talking about. Sounds like the very same thing, right? And this is Henry Ford. Everybody knows Henry Ford. Everybody goes to school and knows Henry Ford, but we don't ever learn about this shit. I didn't know about this until I literally went down this rabbit hole, and it led me to this. Think about that. Dearborn Independent. Ernest G. Leibold and William J. Cameron, with the guidance of Henry Ford, wrote "The International Jew." Henry Ford expressed his opinions verbally to Leibold and Cameron. Leibold was in charge of gathering other sources to support the articles, while Cameron had the main responsibility of expanding Henry Ford's opinions. They ran this every week for nearly 2 years. The paper published articles that assailed Jews for being sneaky and treacherous and conspiring to control the global financial system. Ford also accused Jews of scheming to dominate such American industries as Hollywood, farming, and liquor distribution. He said, and I quote, "It is not merely that there are a few Jews among international financial controllers. It is that these world controllers are exclusively Jews." Henry Ford. What do you guys have to say about that? What does that make you think? I was so stunned when I read this. It was like 4 a.m. when I first found out about this. I was fucking, oh my God. I was spinning. I was literally like, holy shit, this is Ford. This is mother freaking Ford. Is everybody gonna go burn and destroy their Fords now? Now that you know this? Now that you know that he was an anti-Semitic piece of shit? How many Adidas stores are there? I looked it up. In the US, there's 177 locations. There's over 2,500 around the world. Might be a little less than that because that was in 2019. They're in over 160 countries. Can you imagine that? And then what? We should just close those stores down because the founder was a Nazi? Come on, someone explain that to me. I'm still waiting for the explanation. Like, should we do that or not? Serious. Here's how deep Ford was in that fucking shit. For his 75th birthday, the German consul in 1938 gave him the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, which was known as the highest medal Nazi Germany could bestow on a foreigner. Can you believe that? This is somebody that is supposedly the maker of automotives, and he's literally the guy. He made vehicles happen, and he's over here talking about hating Jews, and people still drive his cars, people still promote his shit. I've worked on a Ford commercial. I feel dirty now. I feel dirty. It's insane. Think about that shit. Just take a moment and think about that shit. Seriously. It's bonkers. bonkers. Let's look at military now. The anti-ship missile, a missile designed to shoot boats, kind of like a homing missile, was first brought in Germany, Nazi-controlled Germany. 1937, we get the first practical helicopter. Are we to blame the death of Kobe Bryant and countless others on the Nazis too? How far back should you go before you realize you really don't care? You really don't care. You're not going to go and track down all these things. You're not going to stop drinking Fanta. Fanta, by the way, which people drink, millions of people drink every day, was developed in Germany during the Nazi regime as a result of the 1941 U.S. trade embargo. Jägermeister, 1933, Nazi Germany. You guys understand this stuff? Like, it is insane the depth that the Nazis had in the modern world. Like, their fingers are still in so many industries. Still, so many industries. The flying wing bomber was able to fly 49,000 feet and go 600 miles per hour. It was first flown in 1944, which would eventually motivate the Germans to create the Horton-Ho 229 V3, which was the first stealth aircraft. Now, look that up for me. Horton-Ho 229 V3. Right now, the original, which never got off the ground, was never fully operational, was tested several times, is now at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. You can see on their website, it's there. How did the Americans acquire this? Wait a second. Oh, Operation Paperclip. Take the Nazis, put them in the U.S. government. They must be smart. Look at the stuff they did, right? That's what the government was thinking back then. That Horton-Ho 229 V3 inspired the B-21 that just got released a couple days ago. Literally, look it up, B-21. It just came out. Without the Nazis, we would not have the most up-to-date stealth aircraft out there. Literally the most up-to-date high-end aircraft for stealth. And we stole the blueprints from the Nazis. Or I shouldn't say stole, we borrowed them, right? Because they had already done it. We just borrowed it and said it's ours now. Well, I guess we did claim it. She said we claimed it. Oh, it's ours. Operation Paperclip. Whatever you can put in. Operation Paperclip, honestly, is just like, sounds like documents. Like, Operation Paperclip? Yeah, I saw a bunch of documents with paperclips in them. All right, that's it. Take them. The Horton-Ho inspired the Northrop Grumman B-2 bomber, which is now the B-21. That's the latest. It was just unveiled. The B-21 is nuclear stealth. Nuclear stealth. The first of its kind. Nuclear stealth. Think about that. Wouldn't have been possible without the Nazis. That one I don't necessarily love, and I don't necessarily, I like Fanta, but, now that I know it's associated with Nazis, I might never drink it again. You know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Look at all this shit. Now, think about what Ye's talking about. Look at all the stuff we still use today. Are you going to cancel Ye? Are you going to cancel all these brands at the same time then? It's all the same game. It's all the same line. They're all connected. He's just trying to bring your attention to certain things. That's why he said that shit like, even the microphone that I use, which it's not true, but he's trying to get you to go research. Like, what did the Nazis make? What did we get from Nazi Germany, right? That is still around today. Adidas, Puma, Chanel, Volkswagen, Audi, helicopters, B-21 bombers. Henry Ford was the most anti-Semitic person out there at the time. Literally known as that. And we don't learn about that shit in school. Nobody ever told me Henry Ford was an anti-Semitic piece of shit. Nobody ever told me Henry Ford was an anti-Semitic piece of shit. It took me growing up to realize it. It took me growing up, going and doing research and figuring it out for myself. And I want to end by saying this. Now that most of the original designers have died off, these legendary brands are now being used to insert agendas, belief systems, create normality by their standards. It's no longer about fashion. It's about control and power. Educate yourself on the hidden history, the one that nobody wants to talk about. Think about that. Think about why Nicholas Geschieri left Balenciaga when he talks about how it's become dehumanized. It's become so corporate. It has no longer even been linked to fashion. It's not about clothes anymore. It's an entity that can be used to push an agenda. Think about that. Think about that. This episode was called You Never Know What Tomorrow Holds, because we never know what tomorrow holds. Tomorrow could be the last day we're all here. Today might be the last day we're all here. Just be thankful that God chose us to be on this planet. He gave us that gift, but he also gave us a choice to either choose him or choose the world. I've given you several examples of why the world is trying to drag you down. Literally, these brands, these people, that all they want is to drag you down with them. Don't let them. The Holy Spirit is so much stronger. Ask the Holy Spirit to give you discernment, to open your eyes, to give you the wisdom and understanding to know what is evil and what is good, and be able to call it out. Say, you know what? That's not right. So many people online, I'm so happy so many people are standing up and being vocal, because that's how we fight back. Literally make content that says we're not going to stand for it any longer. This has been Exclusive Consciousness, episode 11. You never know what tomorrow holds. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.